Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a quick review for you of this little guy. This is the Spyderco Chaparral, but using Raffir Noble handles. That's this very fancy material here. First off, size comparison. First against Spyderco Delica. Look, it's the same size as any other Spyderco Chaparral. Here it is against the Rat 1. And of course the Steel Wheel Cut Jack 3-inch model. So you can see it's not a big knife 100%, and it's a nice candidate for that gentleman's sort of knife review. Next thing, I've already reviewed a couple of other Chaparrals. You will have seen, by the time this airs, a review of the FRN Chaparral, as well as a review of the titanium one, as well as the carbon fiber. Look, I've talked about the Chaparral a lot. And as a result, I'm just going to focus on what makes this particular knife very interesting, and that is these fancy Raffir Noble scales. Because, you know, that's what's new here. That's the news, that's what's neat. And so we're going to go ahead, kind of clean these guys up and talk about that material more than anything else, because otherwise it's just a freaking Chaparral. Look, the beautiful thing about this material is that it is very neat and very unique. Because, well, let's zoom in here a little bit, and I'm going to see if I can show this off. It's something that doesn't really photograph well, but what I hope that you get out of this is that it has a depth to it. Here, I'll kind of turn it around a little bit here. And you should be able to see, I hope, that there is actually what's going on here are little meshes of some material or another captured inside, sorry about the reflections here, a resin. So these scales contain this mesh just kind of floating inside this smoky, inky blue resin thing, and that's pretty neat. It is a material with serious depth. I mean, there are very few materials used in the knife world that are just like, in and of themselves, like, whoa. You know, I have spent non-trivial amounts of time staring at this and just looking at like, okay, wow, look at the angle of this guy. I mean, maybe I'm completely weird, but it's a really cool material. And so this is a material that, unlike most, you know, where you just look at the first glance and you see it, this one you really can zoom in. You can look more closely, and that's kind of awesome. And so that's good. It's also relatively lightweight. It's not a super heavy material, given that it is mostly just a resin with a little bit of metal mesh in there, which means it doesn't actually hurt anything particularly, which is good. It still has, it has this nice little area here where you've got the metal, which is a nice offset to this other material here. One thing to note, actually, I'm going to see if I could use that reflection off of this light here. There we go. You can actually see the very edges of that metal poking up out of there. It's not like pokey or anything, but you can feel the texture of this metal as you slide your finger along. Again, it is a really cool material, and I hope very much that this that the camera is capturing what's going on with it here. That's kind of awesome. And it still has a lot of the other nice features of a Chaparral. Namely, it's still got the ambidextrous clip here. You can flip the clip around if you'd like, making this a fully ambi knife. It's still a Chaparral with an XHP blade. Still cuts beautifully, and it is actually the same price as the base model carbon fiber Chaparral, which is surprisingly good, given that, you know, this could probably be a much more expensive sort of material. And so, at least to me, that's what's good about the Raffir Noble here, is that it's a very unique material with some actual depth, both in terms of, like, three-dimensional depth, as well as, you know, you can stare at it for a while and keep finding something new and interesting. It's very lightweight. It still has the nice metal in the backside here. It's still a Chaparral, still the same price as carbon fiber. There's some good here. Unfortunately, going to the Raffir Noble has some unfortunate parts as well. To start with, it does. I had a couple of people when I was carrying this or showing this to people say, oh, it doesn't look like you'd carry a camouflage knife. Well, generally, no, I wouldn't. But at a distance, if you're just kind of looking at this on the table, it does very easily look like a little bit of a camouflage sort of an effect. And so I'd almost like to see other colors of this. I mean, they might be hard-pressed to find meshes, but I think that could be interesting and different, too, for people who don't find the greens and the browns to be as interesting. Also got seaweed out of this, which I can totally see, like a kelp forest in your knife. Cool. So that's one thing that might be bad for some people. Nothing wrong with camo, though. Next thing, it is also a very slippery material. This is just sort of an acrylic sort of thing, and so if your hands are in any way lubricated or soapy, this is going to be coming flying out of your hands, much more so than, for instance, the FRN material, but obviously that's going to be different. Next thing, it is actually transparent. As you can see underneath here, this is the stop pin track. This is a lightning hole to lighten the knife overall. I mean, underneath here, you can completely see what's going on in the innards of the knife. At some level, that's kind of neat and interesting. In fact, you can see little drill holes here where they have internal screws nested. That's kind of interesting at some level, but it also, if you're not looking to see that, isn't so interesting. And so I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't do something like black paint on the bottom of it, just to, let everything pop more. I don't know. I'm sure they tried different things there. Next thing, this actually does have pretty significant variance among the different pieces. I've seen pieces of Raffir Noble that are much more sparse, that have a lot less going on in them than this one does. I mean, the backside, for instance, is a lot more interesting on this guy than the show side, that is. Well, I suppose the right side, it's an ambi knife. But whatever it is, there's a lot more gray resin in this guy than there is over here. And so you really are going to see a lot of variability. You probably want to actually go to a store and pick one of these guys out in person that calls to your name specifically. Because unlike with, just plain FRN, it's gray FRN. They all look the same. This guy's going to look a little bit different. Then finally on the bad side, this guy scratches pretty straightforwardly because it is just a resin. Like an acrylic sort of resin, and so it's very easy as you're handling this guy, as you're using it, for little scratches to appear on the top there. I actually wouldn't be surprised if this cleaned up nicely with some kind of a polishing compound, a polywash or something like that. Make sure and check the material compatibility and whatnot, and so you can probably polish it back out again. But that is something that you got to keep in mind, is this is going to take scratches pretty straightforwardly. And so to me, at least, that's the bad on the Raffir Noble, is that it does take the scratches pretty readily. There is a fair amount of variance, so you may want to pick yours out in person. It is actually transparent, which means you see part of the knife underneath. That's both good and bad, depending on how you want to look at the world. It is pretty slippery, and it does look like camo from a distance, which, may be what you're after, may not be. On final conclusion, look, at some level, they put a new pair of pants on a great knife. The price isn't any different for this than the carbon fiber. And so, if you love this, buy this. If you find this attractive, you buy this guy. If you don't, you buy the carbon fiber, which is about the same thing, or the FRN, which costs $40 less, and is the same knife, functionally speaking. Even slightly thinner, even. So, there are lots of really nice options. It's not my particular style, actually. It's cool, it's fun to look at, but this isn't probably a knife I would carry. But if you like the look of it, then go ahead and buy this guy. You might do it in store, so you can make sure that you find one that you love. But, look, Raffir Noble is definitely neat. I'm glad I got a chance. So thank you very much, Ari, for sending this guy along. Hope this is interesting, that I was really able to capture the uniqueness and beauty of this material, and that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful, see, that little bit right there is great. Have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.